Good morning, everybody. I'm wishing you well, and I know you're probably taken aback a little bit by the name of this episode. Well, I had recently posted a video onto YouTube that has done measurably well and has angered a certain type of the population with viewpoints that I find abominable, to say the least. That being said, one thing I noticed in the trend of racist comments in my comment section was the appearance that a large number of Americans feel like they have to make up their own oppression. I mean, let's be real. The evangelical community, it's their origin story, for God's sake. You know, Christians were originally an oppressed group, and now we live in a society, especially in our country, where Christians are, I believe it's 64% of the population by the last count. I think that's, and I was incorrect. 64 is the percentage of people that have a faith, and I think Christians themselves are closer to like the high to mid 50 range. That being said, I do also want to note that this victim complex that the right wing of our country constantly admonishes the left for, but at the same time completely braces wholeheartedly, is the, do as I say, not as I do tactic of politics is, a fascist method, but that's neither here nor there. I today want to talk to you about the only credible type of oppression straight white people have to face in this country, even women. And that is the oppression from the bourgeois. The 90% of Americans, regardless of race, religion, creed, gender identity, or sexual orientation, 90% of Americans are oppressed by the systems we live in by the bourgeois, the 10%. Not the 1%, the 10%, because studies have shown repeatedly that it is not the 1% necessarily that are the most vocal defendants of their ability to pay nothing in taxes and abuse the proletariat, but in fact it is the 9%, the people living in gated communities with stacked 401ks, multiple Disney World vacations a year, and never having to worry about a bill ever, or having to worry about the bill after a long night out having fun. These people, the hundreds of thousandaires, they're the ones that are constantly shoring it up. And when I say hundreds of thousandaires, I'm not talking about the people who make 100K a year. No. I'm talking about the people who are able to make 800K a year, and then be able to comfortably pocket the majority of their money and still live a comfortable life. The people with no debt, the baby boomer generation, that. You can see it in the fact that despite the fact that every place is saying they're hiring, nobody's actually hiring. If you go to these places where people are working, they say they haven't hired anybody in months. Or when you look for a 40-hour-a-week job, you walk into the interview and they say, oh, it's actually part-time, and if you work here for a few years, maybe you'll get the luxury of being able to work full-time. It's disgusting. And it's just, unfortunately, a fact that a lot of white people in this country are so obsessed with, feeling victimized and demonizing people who are victimized, that they're not even realizing that the people who are oppressing them are running out of the back with all the money. Economic oppression is the only oppression that affects white people, because it affects all Americans that aren't in the 10%. And if you're one of the, rich, if you think, and I preface with this, if you're the type of person that thinks that it is okay for a business owner or a rich person to take advantage of people, that they shouldn't have to pay their workers a minimum wage, that they shouldn't have to do X, Y, or Z to assure the health and well-being of their workers, then you are delusional or a fascist, one of the two. At the very least, you don't actually understand how the world works. You may think you do because you eat up all the libertarian nonsense that is fed to you in your bubble. But no. The only oppression that white people have to deal with is economic oppression. And it is the same oppression that affects every single person in this country. The problem is that some Americans have to deal with other shit on top of that. That's why, at the end of the day, economic oppression should be fixed first, because once everybody doesn't have to worry about food or shelter or their next bill or starvation or any of these things, then the fight for civil rights gets measurably easier for our side. Why? Because if people are still treated like shit, despite literally changing a system economically to be better, well, it's harder to say to people, hey, just pick yourself up by your bootstraps. That and a lot of problems would also be solved for a lot of people if we solved these underlying economic issues in the first place. Regardless. Get the fuck out of my comment section, you racist cocksuckers. That's the last note I'm going to end on.